Welcome to all of you here at the Congress Centre and to all of our online audience who are joining us. Just before I introduce our special honoured guest, I want to give you a little fact and figure sheet. It's estimated that globally 1 in 3 women have experienced a form of domestic violence in their lifetime. Despite it being a widespread issue with ramifications, it remains taboo within families and communities. Known for being a member of the Spice Girls, Melanie Brown is one of the millions of women in the world who has endured domestic abuse. In this conversation, Melanie will be telling us what it means to her to be starting over, her own personal experiences, and what she does to help so many. Please welcome Melanie Brown.
Hi.
Melanie, it's wonderful to see you here at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Yeah.
You've been here a couple of days now. You're a cultural leader. What does it mean for you to be here and to have this kind of platform?
Well, for me, I think it's really important because I'm a survivor of domestic violence, domestic abuse, and there's so many of us that it's happening to. And I'm trying to speak out based off my own experiences, but I've also got a tribe of women behind me because it predominantly happens to women, you know, and their voices are not heard. So I'm using my platform and being invited to places like Davos, which I'm very grateful for. You know, it means that I can actually talk about it on a bigger scale. So that's just really important, I feel.
What's your experience been like so far here at Davos, and what kind of conversations have you had here?
I had a lovely conversation with Sharon over there. What's your company again? The Shapers?
Yeah, so I'm part of the Global Shapers community.
Yeah, so we had a great conversation because she's making change and she's actually, you know, doing it by herself. She's taking the initiative and helping people. And that's what I found I could do. But it came at a really kind of crazy point in my life because I was married for 10 years, living a lie in this very abusive marriage. But yet I was going to work, doing America's Got Talent, doing X Factor, and work was my safe place. But then when I went home, it was an absolute nightmare. But I was riddled with shame and guilt. I was like, who's going to believe me? Because it was drilled into me that nobody's going to believe me. And the way that abuse happens, it doesn't just happen overnight. I mean, I didn't wake up one day and go, right, I'm going to definitely marry an abuser. No, they kind of find you. And it can be when you're at your highest. It can be when you're at your lowest and vulnerable. But their point is, I put it like this, like we all have jobs. I'm really good at my job. You're fantastic at your job. For an abuser, that is their job. It's their job to find you. It's their job to kind of wheedle their way in. And, you know, then they end up isolating you from your friends, from your family. And like I said before, it doesn't just happen overnight. They really dedicate their time and energy from love bombing you, from making you feel like you're going a bit crazy when you've put something down there and then it's moved. So you end up thinking, am I going mad? But it's all part of the coercion and the abuse, because I think people think it's just the physical. No, it's not. It's the mental, it's the financial, and all that compounded, you know, leaves you turning to who but your abuser for help, because you can't call your friends or your mum because they've been whittled out of your life bit by bit. Actually, unbeknownst to me, my family were whittled out of my life. I'd go and call my mum, and my mum would say, oh, you've cancelled me again. I'm like, no, we were supposed to meet for lunch. And so the separation starts, and then you feel like everyone's against you, but also you've got this big secret that you're keeping. And, you know, for most women, they can't actually find a way out. You know, I left about 7 times, and then I was riddled with the, oh my God, is he going to sell something to the papers? What are my friends going to say? He's going to send an email to all my work colleagues, because, you know, the thought of that is embarrassing enough. So when you leave, you have to admit all these things to yourselves, and then then you have to rebuild your life. And because I was abused on every platform financially, I ended up during COVID, having to move in with my mother. You know, I'd spent 15 years in America, I'd lived in Australia, and I was just destitute. I didn't have a penny, really, and I'm a Spice Girl, and I'm all about girl power, and I work. How's this happened to me? And, you know, they're very clever at what they do and how they do it, and they don't stop. They do not stop.
Melanie, what is extraordinary is what you just said, is that you are a Spice Girl, the most successful girl band ever. You stood for girl power. You had, I mean, fans around the world, everything to give you that confidence that you made it. You're a huge success. So how shocking was it for those around you to realize actually what was going on inside was so different?
Well, I think being in an abusive relationship, you become very good at covering things up, whether it be the bruising, whether it be the panic attacks, whether it be the, oh my God, I've got to get in my car from work, otherwise, you know, I'm going to be late home. So you become very, very good at putting on a front, because you don't want, I mean, I'm sitting on the panel of America's Got Talent. I didn't want to have to turn to Heidi and say, you have no idea what I'm going home to. She's going to go, what? That's too much. If I have to admit that to her, I have to admit that to me. And then you're kind of stuck in this cycle where you remind yourself that this is the person I married, who I loved. How can he be doing this to me? But then, you know, making me a cup of tea or giving me flowers, but yet still abusing me at the same time. But I am the breadwinner of the family. I still have to work, and work became my safe place, because at work he couldn't get me. And I think that's one of the most important things about the HR, because I mean, Netflix listened to my talk, and they then educated their HR to actually spot the signs of what domestic abuse looks like within the workplace, because not everybody feels confident to speak about it. I mean, when I brought my book out in 2016 with Louise, who pieced my life back together, no publisher wanted to publish it. You know, nobody was speaking about abuse, and especially not somebody like me who represents girl power, and I'm scary Spice. Not that scary. You know, people were just completely like, well, no, we want you on to talk about Spice Girls. I'm like, I am a Spice Girl. Of course I'm going to talk about Spice Girls, but I have a story to tell, and it's not just my story, it's every other woman's story out there, because it predominantly happens to women. So it's a woman's problem. So if we don't stand up, I mean, the only person that I can refer to was the Tina Turner story, but she was kind of removed because she's not a UK citizen. She's, well, she's Swedish, I think, American. But I'm like, why is nobody talking about it when the statistics are 3 women a week are killed by their current partner or former partner? So the statistics are not getting any better, they're getting worse. And if we don't educate ourselves and our kids and find a safe hub for these women to go to and get help, we're just throwing them away. You know, they're going to end up in the system, and the system's not going to serve them right. And I just think it's such a shame. And if I don't speak out about it, who will? Because these women behind me have not got a voice. So, yeah, and I speak from experience, and I speak from passion. And I get to, you know, go and do talks in Parliament, and people are shocked. But even in this room, you know, there's going to be a lot of women and men here that have been abused, whether it's first-hand or they know a family member or a friend, and it is an epidemic. And, you know, I didn't want to bring out my book because I really thought it was going to ruin my career. It was a big decision that I had to make, but Louise and my children were like, well, if you don't bring it out, who else is going to bring it out? And it was a bit of a shocker to a lot of people. Not that I don't like to shock, but I wanted to wake people up, because this is abuse. The book is called Brutally Honest. You can get it now. And it's a detailed description of, basically, it can happen to anybody. Abuse doesn't have a race, a gender, an age. It doesn't have any of that. If an abuser wants to seek you out and abuse you, they will, and they will hang on to you for dear life.
Melanie, we have to say here that your ex-husband has always denied any allegations.
Of course he's gonna. But he's actually, you know, he's got a criminal record for domestic violence before me, which I did not know. You know, once they get caught, then they move and then they'd start again, and they don't stop until they're stopped. And even, you know, if I wanted to report it and deal with the justice system, you know, I'm fighting a losing battle because the judges are not educated. I have to sit next to my perpetrator, and how am I going to feel? I'm going to be stumbling, I'm going to be sweating, I'm going to have anxiety. I never want to see this person again as long as I live. But dealing with the word abuse, it leaves us women completely broken and shattered. A lot of women end up committing suicide, or they end up staying, and if they stay, it's a death sentence.
Melanie, you said it took you almost 7 attempts to actually leave him.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you about this, and you said actually it was your late father that made the final decision for you. He wasn't well, and he pushed you.
Yeah, well, when you're in this kind of situation, whether it be for a day, a month, in my case, it's 10 years, you know, it takes a lot of self-belief, which is completely been destroyed, you know, so you have to really kind of gather yourself up together, and I just didn't have the strength to do that, just like a lot of women don't, because where are you going to go? Who are you going to tell? There's no friends, there's no family. Are you going to go to a refuge? Most of them are closing down. You know, the shame and the embarrassment that comes with that. Plus, I've got 3 kids. And so what kind of role model am I? But what kind of role model am I staying in that? And what am I going to do when I get out? So unfortunately, my father suffered from cancer. He'd go into remission, he'd get better, and then, you know, he had it for like 7 or 8 years, quite constantly, but I had bouts of getting better. And there was this one time I was on Broadway in New York doing Chicago, and my sister called me, and I hadn't spoken to her for years. She yelled at me, "Dad's got it now, and it's really the deathbed, basically." And I rushed back to LA. My passports had disappeared, so I had to do the emergency passport. Finally got myself to England, Leeds, and my dad, I didn't even recognise him. One, because I hadn't seen him for years, but, you know, cancer's a vicious disease, and he looked half the man. And I was like, wow, I was shocked. Plus the shock of seeing all my family. You know, it's like, how do I explain why I haven't spoken to them, and how do they explain why they haven't? Like, I would assume that my mum would know. It's my mum. She should know that I'm in a tricky situation, but she was getting abused too. She was being abused by my then husband to not call me. I didn't want anything to do with her, which is complete false and fake. So anyway, I cuddled my dad and I said to him, you know, he was hanging on and hanging on, it so much so, even the doctors were coming in and going, "We can't believe he's survived another night." So I would, you know, change his shirt, give him a shave, thinking, is that what he's waiting for? Because, you know, usually they say if somebody wants to pass, they'll wait till you've either gone to the cafe or the toilet. So I would rush everywhere and then come in the room. I'd be like, oh, right, he's still here. What is going on? Yeah. So one day I just leaned over to him and I said, "Dad, you can pass now peacefully, and I promise you, if you do, I'll go back to America and divorce that monster." And he just looked at me and took his last breath. And so for me, it was like, right, I'm doing it for my dad. And I think if it wasn't for that, which is a horrible situation, obviously, if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have had the courage to actually leave. But one thing with my dad is you don't go back on a promise. So I had to follow it through, and thank God I did. Thank God I did, for me and my kids.
Not only did you have the courage to leave Melanie, but of course you talked about Brutally Honest, which came out. And people being shocked when they actually started to read your story and actually realise what was going on. What reaction did the other members have of the Spice Girls?
Oh, they were devastated, because I'd been on tour with them, and I was so, you know, because my girls, we've known each other since we were like 16, 17, 18. I was so terrified that they were going to find out. So I kind of, you know, I had my separate dressing room and I wouldn't really socialise. So they just thought that that was a bit weird. But I do remember one day, Jerry found me like curled up in the shower crying. And it doesn't matter what anybody was saying to me at that time, I didn't have the words to be able to say help me, get me out. I'm in an abusive relationship, because I'd created this facade out of embarrassment, because this person I loved, I can't all of a sudden not love him, and I can't be telling them why, because he plays Mr. Charming. So I just had to get on with it, and I would hope every day that something would change. But Jerry did have a look in her eye, and I think she knew, but she just didn't know what to do, and I didn't have the words to say it. So that tour ended quite abruptly, and I was so relieved, because I was relieved, number one, that I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of my friends. And it's silly what you think about when you're in that situation. And all it probably would have taken would have been somebody to hand me a book like mine, or somebody at work to go, right, we think you need help, and these are the reasons why. Just take that burden off my shoulders, because I didn't have the words. It was only until a few years after I left that relationship, I met Louise, and I said, I need to piece the last 10 years of my life. I don't know where, I know what's happened, but I don't really know what's happened. It seems like a bit of a blur, because, you know, one thing about abusers, they keep you working. So you have to kind of get on with stuff. And I'm very much a northern girl, so I just get on with it. But it was, you know, I think the press, they knew something was going on, because on X Factor, I did walk out on stage one time without my ring, and I think they tried to cover up the bruises, which kind of didn't work, because the lights were so strong, so it's quite obvious something was happening. But even then, I denied it, and I went back to that relationship out of pure fear. I thought he was going to take my kids off me. I thought he was going to say publicly that I'm a terrible mum. All these things that you've been brainwashed to think about yourself, because you know, your abuser's very clever at doing it, and it is an art form. To be able to, I mean, I'm pretty switched on, to be able to kind of convince somebody and love bomb somebody that you are their perfect person. You know, it's very overwhelming, but at the same time you think, wow, this person is amazing. And it's like they all read from the same handbook, the same guidebook. They do things at the same time. A few weeks in, you know, you're called irresponsible. Maybe you've left your key somewhere, but you know you haven't. But the key's then planted at the nail salon or at the gym. And then you start to think, damn, I am really irresponsible. Then the car gets taken off you. Then the accountancy meeting, oh, don't you worry. You know, you've been working all day, I'll take it for you. Oh, that's so nice. And then they're embezzling your money and forging your signatures. And you don't believe that that can happen to you. You know, I'm very much a businesswoman within myself, but you're in love and you kind of give up that sense of control and that power. And then to have it completely gone, you know, if you were to say to me, you're going to marry this man and 10 years later you're going to walk out the door with nothing and be physically and mentally scarred for life, I would go, not me. I'm a Spice Girl.
How did the children cope? Did the children understand what was going on, do you think, Melanie? Did you try and protect?
Well, of course I tried to protect them with everything within my power, but they sense and they see, you know, abuse doesn't happen in front of anybody else. You know, it's not like your abuser's gonna abuse you physically or mentally in front of your neighbour or out at an event or at the dinner table. They do it very tactfully. So my kids didn't see, but I'm sure they felt. And, you know, my oldest is 27, so she did a big campaign for kids that have been part of a domestic abusive household. And her tag was, it's not your fault, because I think kids, especially my firstborn, who's now 27, she blamed herself a lot, like, Mum, why couldn't I have done something to help? And so I had to really go through a lot of sit down and talk. And my two younger kids, they were young enough that it kind of, it impacted them, but not as severely. But I think the best thing to do is to talk, and by talking about it, you know, and one of my kids, they have a course at school now where it's all about, you know, your body's yourself and no means no. And then they, you know, in the police, they base a lot of their training off my book, and so my book's gone into colleges and schools. And one of my kids is like, I think they're talking about my mum, but it's done in a way where it's all about empowering you and knowing what a good, healthy relationship looks like. Even just as simple as, you know, if you're in an early relationship, you don't want your partner to constantly have your password or be checking your phone. that means that you're giving your power away a little bit, and then that can only get bigger and badder, and you don't even realise how it started. But if you think back, you know, in the back of my book, I've got 15 red flags, that the signs that are really simple signs, and a lot of my close friends have said, whoa, I didn't realise that that could lead to that, but it's really simple. It is.
How have you built up your own confidence, your own power back? The book coming out, people's reaction to it, people actually knowing what happened to you and not blaming you. How has that helped you?
Well, I think it's opened up a door for a lot of women especially to come forward and tell me their life story and their abuse when I'm shopping for groceries, which it can be a bit like difficult, but I'm glad that I've opened up the doors for the conversation. You know, back in 2015, 2016, nobody was talking about it. Yeah. Nowadays, you've got TV shows that implicate it, because I do a lot of advising on like things like Coronation Street. So it's in 15 million people's households. So it's become more of a conversation, but it's not enough. It really isn't enough, because women are suffering. And even when you've left that relationship, you have to mend yourself back together. And I thought, I mean, my mother, she's very cut and dry. She's like, you've left him now, you should be fine. And I'm like, I'm actually not fine. I have to now choose what I wear, because he would choose what I would wear. I have to remember who I am again. I have to remember how to laugh, how to socialise, because your every move publicly is watched by your abuser. So if you're to this or to that, you're going to go home to even more abuse. So you have to literally, it's like learning to walk and talk again. And this is happening to women. Like I said, it's 3 women a week globally, worldwide, get killed every week, either by their current partner or former partner. And the most dangerous time is the first year that you leave your abuser, because they can still have their claws in you, especially if you've got kids. So we need to have kind of an uphaul, not just with the justice system, but how we treat, you know, survivors just daily. Because where's the empathy? You know, when people say, well, why didn't you leave him years ago? Actually, to me, like every other survivor, it's impossible. You don't even have access to your phone at that point, to a bank account. All your friends have disappeared because they've been abused, or they've been kind of isolated from you. So leaving abuse, you've got a lot of repairing to do, not just with yourself, but with your friends, with your family. And that, to me, was actually educational, because talking about it again and again made me understand it even more. Hence, I wrote the book, and it is brutally honest, but at least I know like what has happened to me. It's not just in my mind, and I'm not just remembering this or the PTSD, which still happens, but I have to think of myself, I've come a long way. I don't like kind of jump now when a door gets shut, which is one of the things that used to remind me of the physical abuse or the terror, oh my God, he's coming in. So it's going to be with me for life, and I have to just live with it side by side, because I can't push away or unsee or undo what's happened to me. I've got the scars to prove it, both mentally and physically. So I have to live with that. And the way that I live with it is helping others and pointing out the signs and being able to raise money and kind of make it more aware, because it's an epidemic. And one thing about me is I am girl power. I'm all about helping and supporting women, because that is just part of me.
Well, you go to 10 Downing Street, you speak to Sir Keir Starmer, you do speak to government.
Very angrily. I think I've been speaking to a lot of people very angrily, out of frustration. Like, it's like, can you not see these women, these children, you know, they're desperate for help. You know, a lot of the kids get taken off, you know, the survivor and put with the abuser, because maybe the survivor doesn't have the words, or she's too nervous in court to tell her story, or she feels like she's not going to be believed, and because she's quiet, sitting next to her perpetrator, the kids go over there, and there's kids that are being killed and tortured also every year, being placed in that situation. And the justice system just sits back and goes, well, those are the rules. I mean, I've managed to change a few laws, and I've managed to kind of get to the big judges and stuff, and they say, well, we are aware of it, we will do our own course. And I'm like, you need to do a course where it actually makes sense from somebody that's been through it.
Yes. What more would you like them to do, Melanie, in terms of, I mean, you know, you're going to them, you're saying, this is what you need to do, this is what I've been through, this is what women are going through. So it's words, but what action now? What's the action?
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer did mention me in his speech, and I had to rewind that when he did his first speech in Parliament. I was like, he did say my name. Oh, my God, so I am making a difference. But it's not just about talking about it, it's getting the funding because, you know, the government, they just allocate a little bit of money each year, but they end up spending millions because of the police service, because of the fact that they have to have a safe house. So they end up spending so much money anyway. If they just set it aside and allocate it properly and go to a charity with a foundation that actually the money goes direct to the survivor and they actually get the benefits from it, you know, and then it's the education, you know, and I actually got an honorary doctorate. I can't even say that word, it's very big for me.
Congratulations.
An honorary doctorate in Leeds.
Congratulations.
But in receiving that, I put myself back to college and I did a course in trauma-informed care so I can understand even more the ramifications. We all have trauma, we all deal with it differently, but specifically when you've been abused, you need a different kind of care and understanding. You know, we can all go to AA, NA, we can get our families to go to Analol, there's all that support there, but when it comes to abuse, there's nothing still, and this is our problem. And predominantly, it's a woman's problem.
Melanie, I am going to open up questions to the floor, and then I'll come back to you. Does anyone have questions here? Yes.
Hello, I'm Carol. I'm from Lebanon.
We'll just wait from the...
Aye.
Hi. I was just wondering, did you ever find out why you were attracted to such a man?
I wasn't attracted to such a man. I was attracted to somebody who was kind. And the way that abusers start their relationship is they love bomb you, they figure out your weaknesses, what makes you tick, and they kind of focus. It's like an art form that they have. They have like a bit of a woo-woo sense of you, and they're very good at what they do because that's their job. So they're not going to fail. And whether you like that person or not, he's going to keep on going and keep on going until you go, okay, finally, all right, I'll just have a date with you. And then he's going to know exactly what to say. So it's not about being attracted to an abuser. I never knew he was an abuser. I never knew that he'd abused somebody before. No, abusers come in all different shapes and forms. They really do, in all different colours, all different creeds, all different... They play to whatever they think that you will need, and they're like shapeshifters. It's crazy, and I think if we know that, then we should be able to spot it. Like if somebody had given me my book with the 15 signs on the back, I would have gone, right, I'm going to watch out for that and that and that, because I wouldn't have thought that there are evil people out there like that, but there are. You know, in my talk yesterday, Niall Rodgers was saying, oh, I just want everyone to be good. There's so many good people in the world. Yes, there are. But, you know, when you've been through abuse, which, like I said, is an epidemic, 3 women a week are dying, you know, it makes you think, well, I don't want to be jaded, but what have I just gone through? And then that person's done it before, and then he's gone on to do it again and again. Where is the justice, and what can I do about it? So I'm willing to kind of put my story out there, which is just like all those other women's stories, to try and stop it, on every single level. And I think also it starts at home with your kids, you know, telling your sons and your daughters, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. This is a yes and this is a no, being that clear.
We have time for another question. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I grew up in an abusive household, so I recognize a lot of this. When people show you the first time who they are, what are we looking for?
I think abusers don't really show who they are. They don't, because all they're looking for is the next loophole. What can I do to make her come back to me? Or how can I make her feel so worthless and so depressed? I'm the only one that can make her happy and make her sad. Their aim is to control your everything. And if you've got money, if you've got power, if you've got confidence, that is their goal. And like I said, they don't stop. It's not like they wake up one day and go, today I'll be an abuser, tomorrow I won't. It's like a drug addiction for them, because they can see what they can do. Even standing up in court, they can convince a judge, she's just crazy. And the judge will go, oh, yes, she is. Because they've got every proof. it will seem like you're acting erratic, but you're trying to keep your kids with you and you're trying to, you know, be heard, and you get shut down and then you just consider the crazy one. It just doesn't make sense to me when it's so obvious what I've gone through and what I've had to give up and what I'm now talking about. And I feel so strongly and passionate about this because it's not going to change unless we change it, unless we kind of make a safe place, make our own rules, make our justice system better all around the world. Because us women, we do rule the world, so let's stand together and bound together and make it that much more important to be alive.
We've got one more question, I think, over here.
Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Gary.
I want you to know you symbolizes girl power. No matter what you go through or any woman in life, women are God's gift, you understand, to the world. And I'm compelled to say what I have to say because I know someone who have served a life sentence in prison because she was in a very abusive relationship to the point where life was taken. She had taken her boyfriend's life because he was very abusive. And she was asked if she had a chance, would she ever do this again? And she said, no, she wouldn't. She'll take the abuse because it separated her from her family. And I feel, Lord, that no woman should ever feel that way. You understand? That when they take a stand, for their family, you understand, knowing that if they lose their lives, then they're going to leave the children without a mother.
Yeah, but sometimes a lot of women, when they're in that situation, they're hanging on for dear life and they've been told so many negative things that a lot of women start to think, well, you know what, this family is better off without me because I'm a terrible mother, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm disgusting. You know, you get told this every single day, so you are worthless. It's only when you leave and you start to look back and go, how did I endure that? I was living on flight or fight, walking on eggshells. How could nobody have seen it? But you know what? If somebody would have seen it, I would have denied it anyway because I was that coerced and that controlled and that abused.
Very quickly, because we're running out of time, just a very quick question.
Oh, I can talk, can't I?
So first of all, thank you for this amazing conversation and open one. So if we have a friend or a member family that currently is in an abusing relationship, how would you recommend to tackle it? Like to talk with him, to ignore it, just to support without words? Like what would you recommend?
I think you just have to make sure that you're there with no judgment. Don't say, well, I think you should leave him, because you don't know that state of mind. And even talking like that, you don't know if that abuser's got a little microphone on her phone, which does happen a lot, so you can listen to every single conversation that she's done and find out where she's gone. So I think the only thing that you can do is to reassure that person, I am here for you no matter what, like no matter what. And to have that confidence that will then give me the confidence to know that I think I can trust that person. I think I might be able to tell her. And then the doors, the things start to fall away. I'll give her my book, but that might be a bit obvious. But I think you just have to reassure the person that I don't care what happens to you in your life, I'm your friend and I'm there for you. And if somebody would have just said that, I would have had a big breath of relief to go, right, I know I've got one person that is never going to ignore me, that is not going to yell at me or say that I didn't show up for dinner. That person's just going to be there because I think they might know, but I'm too scared to tell them yet.
Melanie, thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing everything with us today here at the Congress Centre, also to our online audience. You received an MBE for your services to charity from the late Queen Elizabeth. Just finally, what's your final message to everyone here?
Oh, God, that's real big. I think we have to stop abuse. It's a woman's problem, and us as women, it's down to us to stop it. And so let's get together and start fighting this, because it's not going to stop if not.
Melanie Brown, thank you so much for joining us today. Bravo.
And thank you.
Thank you.